200 stitches, 3 gunshot wounds, 0 words spoken. They said the war broke Dr. Victoria Ashcroft. They said the screams of dying soldiers in Fallujah stole her voice. They said the IED that killed her husband shattered something inside her that could never be repaired. They were wrong. She wasn't broken by war. She was preparing for one. The blood came off easier in cold water. Victoria learned that in Iraq in 2006, when the field hospital ran out of hot water for 3 weeks straight. When you're elbow deep in a 19-year-old's chest cavity, trying to clamp an artery while mortar rounds shake dust from the tent ceiling, water temperature becomes irrelevant. What matters is speed, precision, the ability to keep your hands steady when everything around you is falling apart. 12 years later, she still preferred cold water. The marble sink in the third-floor washroom of Ravencrest Manor ran ice cold at 3 in the morning. Victoria stood there now, 42 years old, scrubbing dried blood from beneath her fingernails with the same methodical rhythm she'd used in Fallujah. The water turned pink, then clear. She watched it spiral down the drain, her reflection fractured in the antique mirror above the sink. Gray threaded through her dark hair, pulled back in the same severe bun she'd worn under her combat helmet. Her face was leaner than it had been in the army, sharper. The scar that ran from her left eyebrow to her hairline, courtesy of shrapnel from that IED in Mosul, caught the dim light. Her hands, strong and capable, bore the calluses of a surgeon and the scars of a soldier. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman who had seen too much death and learned to live with it. What the mirror didn't show was the secret she'd kept for 8 years. Victoria dried her hands on a linen towel, moving with the silent efficiency of someone who had spent nearly a decade perfecting invisibility. No wasted movements, no unnecessary sounds. In this house of monsters, silence wasn't just survival, it was strategy. She descended the servants' staircase as the grandfather clock in the main hall struck 3:30. The manor slept around her, or pretended to. Vampires didn't truly sleep, she'd learned. They simply went still, conserving energy during daylight hours when their power waned. But at night, Ravencrest Manor breathed with predatory awareness. The Gothic estate sprawled across 12 acres of Vienna's outskirts, hidden behind iron gates and older magic. Built in 1743, it had served as a fortress, a palace, a hospital during World War II, and for the last century, the seat of Lord Nikolai Draven's power. 73 rooms, 42 fireplaces, 17 secret passages that Victoria had mapped in her first year, and one 10-year-old girl who was the only reason Victoria hadn't run. She found Lily where she always did in the early hours, in the conservatory, curled up in the window seat overlooking the eastern gardens. The girl's face was turned toward glass that showed her nothing. Born blind, Lily had never seen a sunrise, but she always knew when morning was coming. "The azaleas are blooming," Lily said softly as Victoria approached. "I can smell them. Grandmother Rose used to say that Austrian azaleas smell like hope." Victoria's chest tightened. Lily's grandmother, Victoria's mother, had died 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. Victoria had been holding her hand when she passed, and she hadn't been able to say goodbye. Hadn't been able to tell her mother she loved her one last time, because by then, Victoria had already been silent for 5 years. She sat beside her daughter and took Lily's small hand in hers. The girl's fingers were cool, a symptom of the mixed blood that ran through her veins. Human and vampire. Light and shadow. A dhampir, though Lily didn't know that word yet. Didn't know what she truly was. Lily turned her face toward Victoria, her unseeing eyes the same hazel green that Victoria's had been before everything changed. The girl smiled, and Victoria's heart broke a little more, the way it did every morning. "You were in the cellars again," Lily said. It wasn't a question. At 10 years old, Lily understood more than she should. "Someone died down there. I saw it in my dream." Victoria went very still. Lily's oracle gift had manifested 2 years ago, shortly after her 8th birthday. At first, Victoria had thought it was just a child's imagination, dreams of shadows and whispers, premonitions that could be explained away as coincidence. But the visions had grown stronger, more specific, more accurate. 3 weeks ago, Lily had dreamed of a fire in the East Wing. 2 days later, a candle had fallen in Lord Draven's study, nearly burning down the library. Last week, she'd seen a car accident on the Ringstrasse. The next morning, a delivery truck had crashed exactly where Lily had described. And last night, she'd dreamed of death in the wine cellars. Victoria pulled out the small leather notebook she carried, her voice, her only way to communicate. She wrote quickly, "What did you see?" Lily's brow furrowed, the way it always did when she reached back into her visions. "A man, young. He was scared. There were teeth, so many teeth. And then nothing, just empty." She shuddered. "He's still down there, Mama, his body. They haven't found him yet." Victoria's jaw clenched. She'd been in the cellars an hour ago, checking the donor holding area. The council required Lord Draven to maintain a stable of human donors, volunteers who provided blood in exchange for money and protection. It was supposed to be regulated, safe. But she'd found Marcus Reiner, 23 years old, student visa from Berlin, lying in the corner of the wine cellar with his throat torn out. Not a clean feeding. Not the precise, almost surgical bite marks that Lord Draven's people left. This had been savage, desperate, the work of a young vampire who'd lost control, or an old one sending a message. Victoria had documented everything. Photographs on her phone, measurements of the bite radius, time of death estimated at 2:47 a.m. based on body temperature. She'd covered him with a sheet and locked the cellar, then scrubbed the blood from her hands. And she couldn't tell anyone. Because Dr. Victoria Ashcroft, the mute medic hired 8 years ago to provide discreet health care for Ravencrest Manor's unusual residents, wasn't supposed to investigate, wasn't supposed to ask questions, wasn't supposed to do anything except treat wounds, prescribe medication, and remain invisible. Speaking would break her cover, and breaking her cover would get both her and Lily killed. She wrote, "Stay in your room today. Don't leave for any reason." Lily's face fell. "Is it bad?" Victoria hesitated, then nodded once. "Worse than the fire?" Another nod. Lily bit her lip, then squeezed Victoria's hand. "Be careful, Mama. I dreamed about you too. There's something coming. Someone. I can't see who yet, but when they arrive—" She trailed off, her blind eyes distant. "Everything changes." The letter arrived at dawn. Mrs. Helena Frost, the head housekeeper who'd run Ravencrest Manor for 60 years, brought it to the staff dining room during breakfast. The older woman's face, artificially preserved at what appeared to be 58, though Victoria knew she was actually 280, was carefully neutral. But her hands trembled slightly as she set the cream envelope on the table. "Lord Draven returns tonight," she announced to the assembled staff. "After 5 years abroad, he's coming home." The room erupted in whispers. Victoria sat perfectly still at the far end of the table, a cup of black coffee cooling in front of her, and watched the reactions. Thomas, the day butler, looked relieved. The young man had been struggling to manage the estate in Lord Draven's absence, and the weight showed in the gray, threading his temples, despite being only 34. Katerina and Sophia, the twin housemaids from Prague, looked terrified. They'd been hired during Draven's absence and had never met the master of the house. James Whitmore, the estate manager and only other human on staff besides Victoria, frowned into his tea. At 67, he was a Vietnam veteran who'd seen enough in his life to recognize when bad news wore a fancy envelope. And Mrs. Frost's expression was harder to read. Satisfaction, perhaps, or anticipation. Victoria filed that away. She'd learned to read people in Iraq. When words were your only warning before an IED exploded or a friendly local turned hostile, you got very good at reading faces, body language, the tiny tells that separated truth from lies. Mrs. Frost was lying about something. The housekeeper's gaze swept the room and landed on Victoria. "Dr. Ashcroft, you'll need to prepare the master suite. Lord Draven will require a full medical assessment upon arrival. It's been 5 years since his last examination." Victoria nodded, pulling out her notebook. "Of course. What time should I expect him?" Sundown, 7:43 precisely. Mrs. Frost's lips thinned. He's bringing guests. 3 members of his inner circle. We'll need to prepare the West Wing guest suites as well. More vampires. Victoria's stomach tightened, but her face remained impassive. She wrote, "How many donors will be required?" 6, rotated in 12-hour shifts. Standard protocols. Mrs. Frost paused. And Dr. Ashcroft. Lord Draven has been unwell. Whatever you observed during his examination remains confidential. Am I understood? Everyone at the table was watching now. Victoria met the housekeeper's gaze and nodded slowly. Good. Mrs. Frost straightened her already perfect posture. The manner must be flawless for his return. Thomas, I want fresh flowers in every room. Katerina, Sophia, the silver needs polishing. James, the perimeter security system requires updating. Lord Draven specifically requested enhanced protocols. As the staff dispersed to their tasks, Victoria remained seated, staring at her untouched coffee. Her mind was already working, fitting pieces together like she'd done with shrapnel wounds, identifying what didn't belong, what might kill the patient if left untreated. Marcus Reiner, dead in the wine cellar. Mrs. Frost's trembling hands. Lord Draven returning after 5 years away. Enhanced security. And Lily's vision? Someone's coming. Everything changes. Victoria rose and headed for the medical wing, her footsteps silent on marble floors. She had 16 hours to prepare. 16 hours before she came face to face with Nikolai Draven, the 650-year-old vampire lord who'd hired her 8 years ago without ever meeting her in person. 16 hours before her carefully constructed silence might finally break. The medical wing occupied the manor's entire south tower, 4 floors of examination rooms, surgical suites, a fully stocked pharmacy, and Victoria's private quarters on the top level. When she'd first arrived in 2008, it had been dusty and outdated, equipped with medical technology from the 1970s. Victoria had renovated it herself, using her own savings and connections from her military days. Now it rivaled any trauma center she'd worked in. Portable ultrasound, digital X-ray, a surgical suite that could handle everything from appendectomies to open-heart procedures, blood refrigeration units, IV stations, even a hyperbaric chamber for treating severe wounds, because treating vampires required understanding what they were. Apex predators with accelerated healing, allergies to silver and certain woods, and vulnerabilities that could kill them in seconds if you weren't careful. Victoria had spent 8 years becoming the best vampire medic in Central Europe. She'd also spent 8 years planning for the day she might need to kill one. The hidden compartment behind the false wall in her private office contained everything she'd need. UV grenades, adapted from flashbangs she'd used in Iraq. Injectable silver nitrate, disguised as standard IV solutions. White oak stakes, hand-carved and blessed by a priest in Salzburg who didn't ask questions. Holy water from 7 different denominations, because she'd learned that faith mattered more than theology. And her father's gift, a Colt 1911 pistol, modified with silver-jacketed hollow-point bullets. Colonel Marcus Ashcroft had given it to her the day before she deployed to Iraq in 2003. "Duty first, Tory," he'd said, using the nickname only family knew. "But protect yourself, always." Her father had died in 2011, while Victoria was already in Vienna, already pretending to be mute. He'd been a JAG lawyer, Judge Advocate General Corps, spending his career defending soldiers in military court. He'd taught her to read contracts, spot legal loopholes, and never trust anyone who smiled too much. She wished she could ask his advice now. Victoria checked her watch. 11:47 a.m. Lily would be in her lessons with Mr. Pemberton, the blind tutor who taught her mathematics and literature in Braille. The girl was safe for now, surrounded by people who believed she was simply a blind daughter of the mute doctor, nothing more threatening than that. No one knew that Lily could see the future. No one knew that Victoria could move faster than any human should, and no one knew that Marcus Reiner's death in the wine cellar wasn't an accident. Victoria descended to the basement level, moving through the manor's service corridors. These passages, built for servants in the 18th century, remained mostly unused now, perfect for unseen movement. The wine cellar's heavy door was still locked. Victoria had the only key besides Mrs. Frost. She slipped inside, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Marcus Reiner's body lay exactly where she'd left it, covered with a linen sheet. The cellars were cold, maintained at 55 degrees to preserve the wine collection, which slowed decomposition. But she could still smell it, the copper tang of blood mixed with the beginning stages of decay. She photographed the body again from different angles. The bite marks were distinctive, 2 puncture wounds but spaced wider than normal. Young vampire, she'd thought initially. But looking closer now, she saw something else. The edges of the wounds were cauterized, burned. Victoria knelt beside the body, pulling on latex gloves. She'd seen burns like this before, but never from feeding. This was punishment, torture. Someone had used heated metal, probably silver, to sear the flesh while feeding. It took significant strength to hold a struggling human still while simultaneously burning them. It took cruelty. She was reaching for her camera when she heard it. Footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, deliberate, not trying to be quiet. Victoria moved on instinct, the same instinct that had kept her alive through 2 tours in Iraq. She grabbed her medical bag, positioned herself between the body and the door, and waited. The lock clicked. The door opened. James Whitmore stood in the doorway, his weathered face grim in the dim light. The estate manager looked at the covered body, then at Victoria. His expression didn't change. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly. Victoria's hand moved to her notebook, but James shook his head. "Don't bother writing. I know you can hear me." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I also know you're not really mute, Dr. Ashcroft. Or should I call you Captain Ashcroft? That was your rank when you left the army, wasn't it?" Victoria's blood turned to ice. Her hand slipped inside her medical bag, fingers finding the syringe of silver nitrate she kept there. Not enough to kill a vampire, but enough to slow one down. But James wasn't a vampire. His heartbeat was audible, steady, calm, entirely human. And he'd served in Vietnam, which meant he understood tactical silence as well as she did. "Relax," James said, showing his empty hands. "I'm not your enemy. I'm also not surprised you're armed right now." He glanced at her bag. "Silver nitrate, I'm guessing? Maybe a stake?" Victoria didn't move. James sighed, suddenly looking all of his 67 years. "I've been watching you for 8 years, Doctor. Watching you map the manor's secret passages. Watching you stockpile weapons you think no one knows about. Watching you train your daughter in that clearing past the East Gardens at dawn, teaching her hand-to-hand combat that no 10-year-old should know." He pulled a flask from his jacket and took a long drink. "You want to know how I know you're not really mute? Because mute people don't whisper to their daughters when they think no one's listening. And you whisper to Lily every night before she sleeps. I've heard you." Victoria's world tilted. 8 years. 8 years of perfect silence, and she'd been compromised by a moment of maternal weakness. "Why haven't you told anyone?" She didn't write it. She spoke, her voice rough and scratchy from disuse, barely above a whisper. James's eyes widened slightly. The confirmation he'd been waiting for. "Because we're on the same side, Captain, or we will be once Lord Draven returns." "What does that mean?" "It means," James said carefully, "that Nikolai Draven didn't hire you randomly 8 years ago. He chose you, specifically, because of what you are." Victoria's grip tightened on the syringe. "And what am I?" "A Dhampir who doesn't know it yet." James met her eyes. "Your father was human, Colonel Marcus Ashcroft, JAG Corps. Your mother was human, Rose Ashcroft, librarian. But your grandmother—" He paused. "Your grandmother was something else, and Nikolai knew her, a long time ago." The floor seemed to drop away beneath Victoria's feet. "That's impossible. Is it? You've never questioned how you survived wounds in Iraq that should have killed you? How you can see in darkness better than your squad mates? How you heal faster than normal humans? James gestured to the scar on her forehead. "That shrapnel should have killed you instantly. Instead, you were back on duty in 48 hours. Victoria's mind raced back to Fallujah, to the IED that had killed her husband David. She'd been standing right next to him when it exploded. The blast had torn him apart. She'd been thrown 30 feet, embedded with shrapnel, her skull fractured, and 3 days later, she'd been back in the operating tent, saving lives. The army doctors had called it a miracle. "Why is he coming back now?" Victoria asked, her voice still rough. "After 5 years?" "Because someone on the council found out about Lily." James's expression darkened. "Found out what she can do, and they want her." The world snapped back into sharp focus. "No. They're calling her an oracle, one of the rarest gifts in vampire society, the ability to see potential futures. With Lily, the council could predict threats, manipulate outcomes, reshape the political landscape of the entire vampire world." James stepped closer. "They've been trying to get to her for 2 years. The fire in the East Wing, that wasn't an accident, it was a test, to see if she could predict it. She did." Victoria thought of every near miss, every close call over the past 2 years. The car accident Lily had foreseen, the suspicious deliveries James had intercepted, the donor who'd tried to break into the tower, found and removed before reaching Lily's floor. "You've been protecting her," she said. "Lord Draven ordered it before he left, but I can't do it alone anymore." James pulled out a folded paper from his jacket. "This came this morning before Mrs. Frost's announcement. Private courier, flagged for my eyes only." Victoria took the paper. It was a medical report, stamped with the council's seal. 23 days from now. Victoria's hands shook, not with fear, but with cold, surgical rage. The same rage that had kept her steady when insurgents fired on her field hospital. The same rage that let her operate for 18 hours straight while soldiers died on tables around her. "They're not taking her," Victoria said, and her voice was steel. "No," James agreed, "they're not. But you need to understand something, Captain. Lord Draven is coming back to protect Lily, but the council has people inside this house. At least one, possibly more. That's why he's been gone. He's been hunting council safe houses across Europe, gathering evidence of their coup attempt." "Coup?" "They want to overthrow the old order, turn key government officials, create a vampire ruling class." James's voice dropped. "They've already turned 50 U.S. senators. 50, Victoria. If they succeed, they'll control the most powerful nation on Earth." Victoria looked down at Marcus Reiner's covered body. This boy. He wasn't a random donor, was he? No. He was a plant, council spy, sent to gather intelligence on Lord Draven's defenses. James's jaw tightened. Someone in this house found out and killed him, violently, as a message. Who? I don't know yet, but I know it wasn't Lord Draven's people. They're still in transit, which means we have a traitor who's been here for years, someone we trust. Victoria's thoughts immediately went to Mrs. Frost, but she kept her face neutral. Why tell me all this? Because when Lord Draven arrives tonight, he's going to ask you one question. James met her eyes. And your answer will determine whether we all survive the next 3 weeks. What question? Before James could respond, the cellar door burst open. Mrs. Frost stood in the doorway, her face flushed with anger. What are you doing down here, both of you? Victoria's hand was still inside her medical bag, fingers wrapped around the syringe. James turned slowly, deliberately placing himself between Victoria and the housekeeper. Found the missing donor, he said calmly. Doctor, Ashcroft was examining the body. Mrs. Frost's eyes narrowed. She looked at Victoria's medical bag, then at the covered corpse. I see. And what did you find, Doctor? Victoria pulled out her notebook with her free hand, writing with forced calm, exsanguination. Time of death approximately 2:47 a.m. Bite pattern suggests young vampire, possibly feral. Recommend immediate lockdown of donor quarters. Mrs. Frost read the note, her expression unreadable. A feral vampire. How unfortunate. She looked at James. Dispose of the body, quietly. No need to alarm the staff before Lord Draven's arrival. That's evidence of a crime, James said. Lord Draven will want to investigate. Lord Draven will want this matter handled discreetly. Mrs. Frost's voice hardened. Need I remind you, Mr. Whitmore, that discretion is why we've all kept our positions for so long? The threat hung in the air. James's jaw worked, but he nodded stiffly. Understood, Mrs. Frost's gaze shifted to Victoria. Dr. Ashcroft, a word. Upstairs, now. Victoria glanced at James, who gave her an almost imperceptible nod. She released the syringe, picked up her medical bag, and followed the housekeeper out of the cellar. They climbed in silence to the main floor, then continued to Mrs. Frost's office on the second level, a severe room decorated in blacks and grays, with antique furniture that looked as cold as the woman herself. When Frost closed the door and turned to face Victoria. For a long moment she simply stared, as if trying to see past the facade of the mute doctor. "You've been very useful these past 8 years," Mrs. Frost said finally. "Competent, discreet, never asking questions that might get you killed." She walked to her desk, opening a locked drawer. "Lord Draven will be pleased with your service." She pulled out an envelope, thick, expensive paper, and handed it to Victoria. "Your payment, $50,000, as agreed upon for your first year. With bonuses for excellent performance, your total comes to $420,000 over 8 years." Mrs. Frost smiled, and it didn't reach her eyes. "Quite generous for a woman with no other prospects, wouldn't you say?" Victoria took the envelope without opening it. She wrote, "I serve Lord Draven because he saved my daughter's life. The money is secondary." That much was true. When Lily had been diagnosed with a rare blood disorder at age 2, no hospital in the United States would treat her. The condition was too unique, too strange. Insurance companies called it pre-existing. Doctors called it impossible. Then Lord Draven's representatives had appeared. They'd offered experimental treatment, a full medical facility, and safety for both Victoria and Lily. In exchange, Victoria would provide medical services to Ravencrest Manor. She'd had no choice. Lily would have died without that treatment. Mrs. Frost read the note and nodded approvingly. "Lord Draven appreciates loyalty, but he also appreciates honesty." Her eyes glinted. "So let me ask you directly, Doctor. Do you know what you are?" Victoria kept her face blank. "I'm a combat medic. Former Army, that's all." "Is it?" Mrs. Frost circled around her desk, moving with the unnatural grace of her kind. "You've never wondered why you can see in the dark? Why wounds heal faster on you than normal humans? Why you can go 3 days without sleep when necessary?" Victoria's pulse quickened, but she kept her breathing steady. Combat training, adrenaline, nothing more. Mrs. Frost stopped directly in front of her, close enough that Victoria could smell the faint scent of old blood that clung to all vampires. "You're lying, but that's all right. Lord Draven will explain everything tonight." She reached out, and Victoria forced herself not to flinch as the vampire's cold finger traced the scar on her forehead. "This should have killed you," Mrs. Frost whispered. "But it didn't, because you're not entirely human, Dr. Ashcroft. You never were." Victoria's mind screamed at her to move, to defend herself, but she remained frozen, waiting. 7:43 tonight, Mrs. Frost said, stepping back. "Master Suite. Don't be late." She was being dismissed. Victoria nodded and turned for the door. "Oh, and Doctor," Mrs. Frost called, "bring your daughter. Lord Draven has specifically requested to meet her." Victoria's hand froze on the doorknob. She turned back slowly and wrote with hands that wanted to shake. "Why?" Mrs. Frost's smile widened. "Because, my dear, your daughter is the reason he's coming home." Victoria found Lily in the conservatory again, sitting with Mr. Pemberton as he read aloud from a Braille copy of The Count of Monte Cristo. The elderly tutor's voice was gentle, practiced, but Lily's face was troubled. She looked up as Victoria entered, her blind eyes somehow finding her mother's position exactly. "Mama? You're scared. I can feel it." Mr. Pemberton stood, gathering his books. "I'll return tomorrow, Miss Lily. Practice your sums." He nodded to Victoria and left quietly. The moment they were alone, Lily spoke again. "The vision from this morning. It's getting clearer." Victoria sat beside her daughter and pulled out her notebook, but Lily shook her head. "You can talk to me, Mama. I won't tell. I've never told." Victoria's breath caught. "How long have you known?" "Since I was 6. Lily's small hand found Victoria's. "I heard you crying one night. About Daddy. About the explosion. You said his name. You said, 'I should have saved you, David.'" Tears burned Victoria's eyes. She'd thought she'd been alone that night, in the darkest hours when grief overwhelmed her carefully maintained silence. "I don't understand why you can't talk to others," Lily continued, "but I know it's to keep us safe. So I've kept your secret, like you keep mine." Victoria pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her hair, lavender soap, and something uniquely Lily. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm sorry you've had to carry that." "It's okay, Mama." Lily hugged her tighter. "We protect each other. That's what we do." They sat like that for a long moment before Victoria pulled back. "The vision. What did you see?" Lily's face grew distant, the way it always did when she reached into that other sight. "A man. Old, but not old. He has eyes like winter, cold and pale. He's coming here tonight." "Lord Draven." "Yes, but he's not the danger." Lily's brow furrowed. "There's someone else, someone close. I can see them standing in shadows, watching, waiting. They've been waiting for years." "Who?" "I can't see their face, but I can see what they want." Lily's voice dropped to a whisper. "They want me. They want to use what I can do. And they'll kill you to get me." Victoria's jaw set. "That won't happen." "I saw it, Mama. I saw you fighting. I saw blood. I saw—" Lily's voice broke. "I saw you stop moving." "Visions aren't certainty," Victoria said firmly. "They're possibilities. And I'm very good at changing possibilities." She cupped Lily's face in her hands. "Do you trust me?" "Always." "Then trust this. I will not let anyone take you. Not the Council. Not Lord Draven. Not anyone." Victoria's voice hardened with military precision. "I've survived 2 tours in Iraq, an IED blast, and 8 years in a house full of vampires. Anyone who wants to hurt my daughter will have to go through me first." Lily smiled weakly. "That's what scares me. Because in my vision, someone does." The sun set at 7:38 p.m. Victoria stood in the master suite with Lily beside her, both of them dressed simply. Victoria in her usual dark slacks and white medical coat, Lily in a blue dress that matched her unseeing eyes. The room around them was immaculate, prepared to Mrs. Frost's exacting standards. Victoria's medical bag sat at her feet, the reassuring weight of the syringe and her father's pistol hidden inside. She'd positioned herself with her back to the window, giving her clear sight lines to both entrances and the exit to the private balcony. Old habits from Iraq. Never let anyone get between you and your escape route. At 7:43 precisely, the door opened. Lord Nikolai Draven entered his suite for the first time in 5 years, and Victoria's breath caught despite herself. The historical paintings didn't do him justice. They showed a stern-faced aristocrat with dark hair and pale eyes, always dressed in period clothing, 18th century coat and breeches, 19th century morning dress, early 20th century military uniform. But the man who walked through the door looked like he'd stepped out of a different kind of portrait. A soldier's tribute, perhaps. A memorial to the wars he'd survived. He stood approximately 6 feet tall, lean and compact like a boxer rather than a bodybuilder. His hair was black, streaked with silver at the temples, a genetic memory of the human he'd been 650 years ago. His face was angular, with the high cheekbones and strong jaw of Eastern European nobility. Scars crossed his neck and disappeared beneath his collar, old wounds that had healed but left their mark. But it was his eyes that stopped Victoria's heart. They were pale blue, so light they looked almost white in certain angles. Winter eyes, Lily had said, cold eyes, but not cruel. Tired. That was the word. He looked profoundly, eternally tired. He wore simple clothing, dark jeans, a black sweater, combat boots. Practical. Military. The clothes of someone who'd been traveling hard and sleeping rough. 3 people followed him into the room. A tall woman with silver hair and predator's grace. A stocky man with a beard and intelligent eyes. And a younger vampire who moved with the nervous energy of someone relatively new to immortality. But Draven's attention fixed immediately on Victoria and Lily. He stopped 3 feet away, his eyes scanning Victoria's face with an intensity that made her want to step back. Then his gaze dropped to Lily, and something shifted in his expression. Softness, recognition, grief. "You have your great-grandfather's eyes," he said quietly. Lily's hand tightened in Victoria's. The girl tilted her head, her blind gaze somehow finding his face. "You knew him?" "I knew him." Draven's voice carried centuries of weight. "Michael Draven. He died on a beach in Normandy, June 6, 1944. D-Day. He was 20 years old and the bravest soul I've ever known." Victoria's world tilted. Michael Draven. Her husband David's grandfather. The man who'd raised him after David's parents died. The war hero who'd saved 17 Jewish refugees from a train bound for Auschwitz, who'd held a position against Nazi machine guns long enough for his unit to evacuate wounded. The grandfather David had been named after. "That's—" Victoria's voice emerged without permission, rough and shocked. "That's not possible." Draven's winter eyes shifted to her. For a long moment he simply looked at her. Then he did something Victoria never expected. He knelt. Lord Nikolai Draven, 650-year-old vampire, master of Ravencrest Manor, knelt on the floor in front of a 10-year-old blind girl and a combat medic who'd been pretending to be mute. "Forgive me," he said, and his voice cracked. "I failed Michael. I wasn't fast enough to reach him before the bullets did. I've carried that failure for 72 years. He looked up at Lily. "But you're his legacy, his blood, and I will not fail you." Lily's lip trembled. "You're my family?" "Your great-great-grandfather, if we're being technical, though I look younger than your mother." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Vampire biology is complicated." Victoria's mind raced, trying to process. David's grandfather Michael had been Dhampir, half vampire, which meant David had been, and Lily was. "You didn't know," Draven said, reading her expression. He rose to his feet with liquid grace. "Your husband never told you what he was, what you were, because the council was hunting his bloodline." His jaw clenched. "I thought I'd hidden them all. I thought Michael's descendants were safe, scattered across continents with new identities. But the council found David anyway." Victoria's legs went weak. "The IED in Mosul, that wasn't an accident." "No." Draven's voice was gentle but firm. "It was an assassination. David was investigating strange deaths among local civilians, vampires feeding without discretion, violating the treaty we have with human governments. He got too close to the truth. So they killed him." The room spun. 8 years. 8 years. Victoria had believed her husband died because of the war, because of random violence, because of God's cruel lottery. But it had been murder. Why? The word tore from her throat. Why kill him? Because he was Dhampir, because he carried my blood, and because— Draven glanced at Lily. He had a daughter who inherited something the council wants very badly. "My sight," Lily whispered. "Your oracle gift. The ability to see probability streams, potential futures." Draven's expression darkened. "There are perhaps 5 true oracles in the entire world. The council has hunted them all, trying to control them, use them to predict threats, manipulate outcomes." He looked directly at Victoria. "They want Lily to predict the results of their coup, and they'll kill anyone who stands in their way." Victoria's hand slipped into her medical bag, fingers finding her pistol. "Then they'll have to kill me." "I know," Draven said simply. "That's why I'm here." To make sure they don't. The silver-haired woman stepped forward. My lord, we should begin the security assessment. The council could move at any time. Draven nodded but didn't look away from Victoria. Dr. Ashcroft, I need to ask you a question, and I need your honest answer. This was the moment James had warned her about, the question that would determine everything. Victoria met those winter eyes and nodded once. Can you fight? Draven asked. Not as a doctor, not as a medic, but as a soldier, because what's coming won't be solved with medicine. It will require war. Victoria thought of Iraq, of Fallujah's burning streets, of operating tables slick with blood while mortars shook the ceiling, of carrying wounded soldiers through kill zones because no one else would. She'd sworn an oath once, to protect and defend, to serve those who couldn't serve themselves. Lily was depending on her, and Victoria had never broken an oath in her life. She pulled the pistol from her bag and checked the chamber with practiced efficiency, one silver-jacketed round already loaded, 6 more in the magazine. Then she looked Draven in the eye. I'm a combat medic, Lord Draven, she said, her voice still rough but steady. I've performed 347 field surgeries under fire. I've killed 12 insurgents in defense of my hospital, and I've kept my daughter safe in a house full of monsters for 8 years without saying a single word. She raised the pistol, not pointing it at anyone, just showing she knew how to hold it. So yes, I can fight. Draven's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those winter eyes. Respect, perhaps, or recognition. Good, he said. Because Lily just had another vision, didn't she? I can see it in her face. Victoria looked down at her daughter. Lily's blind eyes were wide, her face pale. They're already here, Lily whispered. 3 of them, in the gardens. They're coming for me right now. As if on cue, the window exploded inward. 3 figures in black tactical gear crashed through the glass, moving with vampire speed. 1 went for Draven, 1 went for the silver-haired woman, and the third, a young male vampire with wild eyes, went straight for Lily. Victoria didn't think. She moved. 8 years of silence shattered in a single moment as Dr. Victoria Ashcroft became captain. Victoria Ashcroft once more. She threw herself between the attacker and her daughter, her body moving with speed that no normal human possessed, the speed of Dampier reflexes finally unleashed. Her pistol came up. She fired twice, center mass, just like training. The silver bullets hit the vampire in the chest. He screamed, a sound of pure agony, and stumbled backward. Not dead. It took a headshot or heart shot to kill a vampire, but hurt. Victoria didn't give him time to recover. She dropped the pistol, grabbed a scalpel from her medical bag with her left hand, and drove it into his throat with surgical precision. The blade was silver-plated, blessed, and sharp enough to sever the carotid artery. Black blood sprayed across her white coat. The vampire collapsed, clawing at his throat. Within seconds his body began to desiccate, skin turning gray, then black, then crumbling to ash. Victoria stood over the remains, breathing hard, scalpel still in her hand. The entire room had gone silent. Draven stared at her, his expression caught between shock and something else. Admiration, perhaps. The silver-haired woman had the second attacker in a chokehold, snapping his neck with casual efficiency. The bearded man stood over the third attacker's staked body, looking grim. And Lily, brave, beautiful Lily, stood exactly where Victoria had left her, trembling but alive. "Mama?" Lily's voice was small. "You moved so fast." Victoria dropped the scalpel and pulled her daughter close. "I know, baby. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Don't be." Lily buried her face in Victoria's chest. "You saved me." Draven approached slowly, carefully, as if approaching a wounded animal. "How long have you known what you are?" "I didn't." Victoria's voice shook, not with fear but with adrenaline come down. "Not until tonight. James said my grandmother—" "But I thought he was wrong." "He wasn't." Draven gestured to the vampire ash on the floor. "That reaction time, that speed, that's not human, Dr. Ashcroft. You're vampire. Quarter vampire, most likely. It usually skips a generation or two, expressing randomly. Victoria looked at her hands, still steady despite everything, still holding her daughter. My grandmother never said anything. She probably didn't know either. The gift can lie dormant for decades. Draven's voice softened. But it's awake now, and the council knows it, which is why they sent assassins tonight. How did they get past security? The silver-haired woman demanded. Someone let them in, Draven said grimly. He looked at Victoria. Someone in this house is working for the council. Someone you trust. Victoria thought of Mrs. Frost's trembling hands, of her insistence on disposing of Marcus Reiner's body, of 60 years of perfect service that might have been 60 years of perfect lies. I know who, she said quietly. Draven nodded. So do I. But we need proof before we move. Until then, he looked at Lily. You and your mother are moving into the West Wing. My personal guards will watch your doors. No one gets in or out without my direct approval. We'll be prisoners, Victoria said. You'll be alive. Draven met her eyes. The winter solstice is 23 days away. That's when the council plans to move. Take Lily, eliminate me, and complete their coup. We have 23 days to stop them. How? Draven's smile was cold and sharp. By doing what I should have done 72 years ago when I lost Michael. By going to war. He extended his hand to Victoria, not as a lord to a subject, but as a soldier to a soldier. Will you fight with me, Doctor? Ashcroft, will you help me protect our family? Victoria looked at that offered hand, looked at Lily, her daughter, her entire world, looked at the ashes on the floor that had been a vampire trying to kidnap her child. She thought of David, killed because he'd gotten too close to the truth. She thought of 8 years of silence, 8 years of hiding, 8 years of pretending to be broken when she'd been preparing for exactly this moment. Then she took Draven's hand. Her grip was firm, her voice steady. I'll fight with you, she said, but not just to protect, to win. Draven's winter eyes gleamed. Good, because winning is the only option we have. As if punctuating his words, Lily gasped. Her blind eyes went distant, seeing something the rest of them couldn't. What is it? Victoria asked. I see. Fire, Lily whispered. So much fire, and blood, and... Her face went pale. Mrs. Frost. She's the one. She's been lying for 60 years. We know, Draven said gently. No, you don't understand. Lily's voice shook. She's not working for the council. She is the council. She's the one who ordered Daddy's death. She's the one who's been planning this from the beginning. Victoria's blood turned to ice. Where is she now? Lily's oracle sight focused, sharpening. The wine cellar. She's destroying evidence, burning Marcus Reiner's body, and... Her breath hitched. She knows you know. She's calling for reinforcements. 20 vampires. They'll be here in... The manor's alarm system screamed to life. Draven's face went hard. How long? 7 minutes, Lily whispered. Victoria looked at her daughter, at Draven, at the destroyed window and the ashes on the floor. 7 minutes until war came to Ravencrest Manor. 7 minutes until every secret she'd kept, every sacrifice she'd made, every silent moment of the past 8 years would be tested. She'd survived Iraq. She'd survived grief. She'd survived in silence. Now it was time to survive the truth. Victoria picked up her pistol, checked the magazine, and looked at Draven. Tell me the plan, she said. And Lord Nikolai Draven, who'd survived 650 years of history, who'd lost his son on a beach in Normandy, who'd been preparing for this war longer than Victoria had been alive, smiled. The plan, he said, is to make them regret ever threatening our family. 7 minutes. Victoria had faced longer countdowns in Fallujah, 30 seconds between mortar warnings and impact, 15 seconds to apply a tourniquet before a soldier bled out, 3 seconds to decide between cover and saving a wounded Marine. But 7 minutes to prepare for a siege against 20 vampires felt like both an eternity and no time at all. "West Wing," Draven commanded, his voice cutting through the shrieking alarm. "Defensive position, now." The silver-haired woman, introduced in rapid fire as Katrina Volkov, Draven's second in command, was already moving, pulling communication equipment from a hidden panel in the wall. The bearded man, introduced as Joseph Cross, swept broken glass from the floor with inhuman speed, eliminating obstacles. Victoria grabbed Lily's hand. "Stay behind me. Always." "I know, Mama." Lily's voice was steady despite her trembling. At 10 years old, she'd already learned that fear and action weren't mutually exclusive. "I can see them in my mind. They're coming from 3 directions. Main gate, East Garden, and—" she gasped. "The tunnels. There are tunnels under the manor I've never seen before." Draven's jaw clenched. "The old escape routes from World War II. I sealed them in 1947. He looked at Katrina. "Helena knows about them. She's been here since 1956. She would have found them." "Then she's been planning this for 60 years, Victoria said, already thinking tactically, "which means she knows every defense we have." "Not every defense." Draven's winter eyes gleamed dangerous. "She doesn't know about you." They moved through the manor's corridors at vampire speed, Draven, Katrina, and Joseph flowing like shadows, while Victoria discovered that her Dhampir blood allowed her to keep pace. Lily rode on her back, small arms wrapped tight around her mother's neck. The West Wing was a fortress within a fortress. Draven led them to a room Victoria had never been allowed to enter. A war room, she realized, seeing the maps on the walls, the weapon racks, the communications equipment that looked military-grade. 1944, Draven said, following her gaze. "When the Nazis occupied Vienna, I ran resistance operations from this room, hid refugees, coordinated escapes. Michael trained here before he shipped out to Normandy." His voice went distant. "I tried to stop him from going, told him the war was humanity's problem, not ours." "What did he say?" Victoria asked, setting Lily down in a reinforced corner. "He said, 'If we only protect our own kind, then we're no better than them.'" Draven's throat worked. 3 weeks later, he was dead on Omaha Beach. Joseph was already distributing weapons, silver-loaded firearms, UV grenades, wooden stakes that looked like they'd been carved by hand. Katrina worked the communications board, her fingers flying. 6 minutes, she announced. "Main force approaching from the north. Estimated 20 hostiles, heavily armed. But I'm picking up another signature. 50 vampires, 2 miles out and closing. Reinforcements." Victoria's stomach dropped. 50? The council isn't taking chances. Draven checked a pistol that looked older than the United States. "They want Lily badly enough to risk open war. That tells me something." "What?" "That whatever coup they're planning, they need an oracle's sight to succeed. Without Lily, they're flying blind." He looked at Victoria's daughter, his expression softening. "Which means she's the most valuable person in this fight, and the most vulnerable." Lily spoke up from her corner, her voice small but clear. "I can help. My visions are exactly why you're staying in this room," Victoria said firmly. She knelt beside her daughter. "Baby, I need you to do something for me, something hard." "What?" "No matter what you hear out there, gunfire, screaming, me shouting, you stay here. You don't open this door for anyone except me, Lord Draven, Katrina, or Joseph. Not Mrs. Frost, not James, no one else. Understood?" Lily's lip trembled. "What if something happens to you?" Victoria cupped her daughter's face. "Then Katrina will get you out through the escape tunnel. There's a car waiting 3 miles north, fueled and ready. Joseph knows the route." She looked up at Draven. "You arranged that, didn't you?" "The day I hired you 8 years ago." Draven's voice was quiet. "I've been preparing for this fight since the day the council killed your husband." The alarm changed pitch, a different warning. "Perimeter breach." 4 minutes, Katrina said. Draven moved to the weapon rack and pulled down a sword. Not decorative, but brutal and functional, the blade dark with age and use. "Victoria, can you shoot?" "Yes." Can you kill? She thought of the vampire she'd just turned to ash, thought of insurgents who'd tried to overrun her field hospital, thought of what she'd do to anyone who tried to hurt Lily. Yes. Good. He handed her a tactical vest, Kevlar reinforced with silver mesh. Because in about 3 minutes, we're going to war. They made their stand in the manor's grand entrance hall, a deliberate choice. The high ceiling gave Draven's people the advantage of vertical mobility. The marble floors provided no cover for attackers, and most importantly, it forced the enemy into a kill box with limited entry points. Victoria positioned herself on the second-floor balcony, prone behind a marble balustrade with a clear sight line to the main entrance. The rifle Draven had given her was loaded with silver core rounds, semi-automatic, with a scope she'd zeroed in 30 seconds. Old muscle memory from Iraq, some skills you never forgot. Katrina held the east corridor, twin pistols in hand, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. Joseph guarded the west approach, a massive war axe resting on his shoulder like it weighed nothing. And Draven stood in the center of the hall, sword in hand, looking every inch the warlord he'd been for 6 centuries. The main doors exploded inward. 20 vampires poured through, not the shambling monsters of Hollywood, but tactical operators moving with military precision, body armor, helmets, assault rifles loaded with wooden rounds designed to incapacitate vampires. Victoria's training kicked in. She didn't aim for headshots. Too small, too risky. Center mass, controlled pairs. Breathe, squeeze, follow through. Her first shot took a vampire in the chest. Silver penetrated the armor, and he went down screaming. Her second shot hit another in the throat. Third shot, fourth shot, fifth. She fell into the rhythm of combat, that strange calm that descended when your life depended on not missing. Below, Draven moved like poetry written in violence. His sword sang through the air, separating heads from shoulders with surgical precision. He'd lived through centuries of warfare, crusades, Napoleonic campaigns, World War I trenches, and it showed in every economical movement. Katrina's pistols barked in rapid succession, each shot finding vulnerable points between armor plates. Joseph's axe rose and fell, and vampires fell in pieces, but the attackers kept coming. Victoria reloaded, muscle memory 3 seconds flat, and resumed firing. Her earpiece crackled. "North window," Katrina's voice. "4 breaking through." Victoria swung her rifle, acquired the targets, fired. 1 down. 2. The third made it through, dropping to the hall floor with inhuman grace. Draven was there in an instant, sword removing the vampire's head before he could raise his weapon. 12 down, Joseph's voice rumbled through the comms. 8 remaining. Negative, Lily's voice cut through. She'd patched into their channel. "Mama, there's more coming. The tunnels. Mrs. Frost is leading them herself." Victoria's blood froze. "How many?" 10, and she has something that hurts vampires. A weapon." Draven cursed in a language Victoria didn't recognize. "Silver gas grenade, aerosolized particles. It won't kill us, but it'll incapacitate." "Then we seal the tunnels," Victoria said, her mind already working through options. "Where do they surface?" "Wine cellar." The same place Marcus Reiner had died. The same place Mrs. Frost had been destroying evidence when Lily's vision spotted her. Victoria made a decision. "Joseph, can you hold this position with Katrina?" Go." She was already moving, slinging the rifle across her back and pulling her pistol. "Draven, with me. We end this now." They ran through the manor's corridors, Victoria's Dampier speed letting her keep pace with a 600-year-old vampire. Behind them, gunfire still echoed from the entrance hall. Ahead, the wine cellar stairs descended into darkness. Draven paused at the top, his hand on her arm. "Victoria, Helena Frost is nearly 300 years old. She's survived the Black Death, the Napoleonic Wars, 2 world wars. She's not just a housekeeper." "What is she?" "A specialist. The Council's best infiltrator. She's destroyed 3 vampire kingdoms from within by playing the loyal servant for decades, then striking when they trusted her most." His winter eyes bored into hers. "She will try to kill you. Not because you're a threat, but because you're what I care about. And she knows the best way to break someone is to take what they love." Victoria thought of David, killed because he'd gotten too close to the truth. Thought of Lily, hunted because of what she could do. Thought of 8 years spent in silence, preparing for this exact moment. "Then she's about to learn," Victoria said quietly, "that the people I love are the reason I'm dangerous." They descended into darkness. The wine cellar was burning. Not with normal fire, with chemical fire, the kind that burned at temperatures high enough to destroy evidence completely. Mrs. Frost stood in the center of the inferno, untouched by flames that would have killed any human instantly. She'd changed. Gone was the prim housekeeper in her gray dress. Now she wore tactical gear, her silver hair loose around a face that no longer bothered to hide its predatory nature. 10 vampires flanked her. Her personal guard, Victoria realized. Loyal to her, not to the council, not even to Lord Corvinus. This was her coup, her plan, her endgame. "Nikolai," Mrs. Frost said, her voice carrying over the roar of flames. "I was hoping you'd come personally. Saves me the trouble of hunting you down." Draven stepped into the firelight, sword ready. 60 years, Helena. You've been in my house for 60 years. 60 years of patience. 60 years of watching you play the enlightened lord, protecting humans, advocating for peace. Her lip curled. "You're weak, Nikolai. You always have been, ever since you let that human woman turn you soft in 1910. Isabel didn't make me weak. She made me remember what it means to have something worth protecting. And look where that got her. Dead. Because you couldn't let go of your pathetic human sentimentality." Mrs. Frost's eyes shifted to Victoria. "And now you've found another one. A medic who plays soldier. How quaint." Victoria said nothing. She was counting. 10 guards, plus Mrs. Frost. 11 targets. 17 rounds in her pistol. Not enough. But she didn't need enough. She just needed the right one. Mrs. Frost continued, clearly enjoying her moment. "Did you know I was there, Nikolai? In Normandy, June 1944. I watched your precious Michael bleed out on that beach. The council paid me $50,000 to make sure he died before you could reach him." Draven went very still, dangerously still. "What did you say?" "He could have survived those wounds. Dhampir healing is remarkable. But I had silver core bullets in my rifle. One shot to the heart, and his healing stopped." Mrs. Frost smiled. "He died calling for you." "Papa," he said, over and over. "Papa, help me." Victoria saw it happen in Draven's face, the careful control shattering, the ancient grief erupting into fury. His eyes flashed red, fangs descending, the civilized lord replaced by the predator beneath. Mrs. Frost had made a tactical error. She'd wanted to hurt him, to gloat. But she'd forgotten that wounded predators are the most dangerous kind. Draven moved. 650 years of combat experience unleashed in a single moment. He crossed the space between them faster than Victoria could track, his sword singing. 2 of Mrs. Frost's guards fell before they could react. A third lost his arm. A fourth, his head. Mrs. Frost threw the silver gas grenade. It detonated in mid-air, releasing a cloud of aerosolized silver particles. Draven screamed, a sound of pure agony, and fell to his knees, smoke rising from his skin where the silver made contact. The remaining guards closed in, weapons raised. Victoria didn't hesitate. She'd learned in Iraq that sometimes the only way to win is to do what the enemy doesn't expect. They expected her to retreat, to protect herself, to be cautious. She charged, right into the silver cloud. It hurt. God, it hurt. Like breathing acid, like her lungs were on fire. But she was only quarter vampire. The silver affected her, but not like it affected Draven. Not enough to stop her. Her first shot took out the guard closest to Draven. Headshot, clean kill. Her second shot shattered the kneecap of another. Third shot, fourth shot, fifth. She fired as she moved, using the silver cloud as cover because the guards couldn't see any better than she could. She reached Draven, grabbed his arm, and hauled him backward out of the cloud. He was heavier than he looked, dead weight, his skin blistered and raw. "Stay down," she commanded, then turned to face the remaining guards. 6 left, plus Mrs. Frost. Victoria's pistol had 12 rounds remaining. Her rifle on her back held 30, and she had one UV grenade on her belt, a last resort, because it would hurt Draven too. Mrs. Frost stepped forward, pulling her own weapon, a long silver knife that gleamed in the firelight. Brave. Stupid, but brave. Tell me, Doctor, Ashcroft, was it worth it? 8 years of silence, 8 years of hiding, all to end here in a burning cellar? Victoria's finger was steady on the trigger. You talk too much. She fired. Not at Mrs. Frost, at the wine rack directly above the vampire's head. The bullet shattered a support beam, and 200 bottles of vintage wine came crashing down. Mrs. Frost dodged, fast as lightning, but Victoria had counted on that. Had counted on where she'd dodge, based on the vampire's stance, her weight distribution, her natural movement patterns. Victoria's second shot caught Mrs. Frost in the shoulder. Silver bullet, silver wound. The vampire hissed in pain, stumbling. The guards rushed Victoria all at once. Classic mistake, bunching up. She pulled the UV grenade, popped the pin, and threw it behind them. "Close your eyes," she screamed to Draven. The grenade detonated with a flash of artificial sunlight. The guards screamed, their skin blistering instantly. Victoria squeezed her eyes shut but still saw the afterimage through her eyelids. When she opened them, 5 of the 6 guards were down, writhing in agony. The 6th, the one furthest from the blast, came at her with a wooden stake. Victoria didn't have time to shoot. She did what her hand-to-hand instructor in Army combatives had drilled into her. She went low, inside his reach, grabbed his wrist, and used his own momentum to drive the stake into his chest. He looked surprised for a moment before crumbling to ash. That left Mrs. Frost. The vampire stood among the burning wine and scattered bodies, clutching her wounded shoulder. Her face was a mask of fury. "You killed my entire team," she said quietly. "Do you know how long it took to assemble them? How much I paid?" "I don't care." Victoria raised her pistol, aiming for the heart. "You killed my husband. You've been hunting my daughter. You murdered an innocent boy in this cellar just to send a message." Marcus Reiner wasn't innocent. He was a spy. He was 23 years old. Victoria's voice was ice. He had a mother in Berlin who's still waiting for him to call. Mrs. Frost laughed, bitter, cruel. "You think the council cares about mothers, about families? We're building a new world, Dr. Ashcroft. A world where vampires don't hide in shadows, begging humans for permission to exist. We'll rule openly. 50 U.S. senators have already been turned, 30 members of parliament, 12 heads of state. In 6 months, we'll control the Western world." "And you need Lily to see how it plays out," Victoria said. "To predict opposition, to game theory your coup." "Smart woman, yes. An oracle can see probability streams, potential futures. With her gift, we can predict every move our enemies make. We'll be unstoppable." "No." Victoria's finger tightened on the trigger. "You'll be dead." She fired. Mrs. Frost moved. Inhuman speed. Decades of combat experience. The bullet grazed her ribs instead of her heart. But it was enough. The silver burned, spreading through her system. Mrs. Frost stumbled, her movements slowing. Victoria fired again, and again, and again. Each shot found its mark: shoulder, chest, abdomen. Not killing shots individually, but cumulative damage. Silver poisoning, blood loss, pain. When her pistol clicked empty, Victoria didn't reload. She pulled the scalpel from her boot, the same one she'd killed the earlier attacker with, still stained with vampire ash. Mrs. Frost was on her knees now, coughing black blood. You can't win. The council has already won." "Maybe." Victoria knelt in front of the dying vampire. "But you won't see it." She drove the scalpel into Mrs. Frost's heart with surgical precision, clean, quick, professional. The vampire's eyes went wide, then empty. Her body began to crumble, 60 years of life in Ravencrest Manor reduced to ash and memory. Victoria stood, breathing hard, covered in blood and soot. Behind her, Draven was struggling to his feet, his skin already healing from the silver burns. "Is it over?" he asked, his voice rough. Victoria looked at the destruction around them. Burning wine, vampire ash, the evidence of Mrs. Frost's betrayal consumed by flames. Above them, she could still hear gunfire from the entrance hall, though it was sporadic now, winding down. "No," she said quietly. "This is just the beginning." They found Lily exactly where Victoria had left her, safe in the war room with Katrina standing guard. The moment the door opened, the girl ran to her mother, and Victoria caught her, holding tight despite her wounded ribs and burned lungs. "You're hurt," Lily whispered, small hands finding the injuries with oracle precision. "I'll heal." Victoria pulled back enough to check her daughter over. No injuries, no trauma beyond fear. "You're safe. That's all that matters." Joseph appeared in the doorway, covered in vampire ash but grinning. "Hall is secure. 18 hostiles eliminated. 2 escaped. Our casualties, 0. "The reinforcements?" Draven asked. "Turned back once they realized the main force was destroyed. Cowards." Joseph's grin widened. "We have prisoners too. 3 who surrendered when they saw Mrs. Frost's guards fall." "Good. I want to question them." Draven looked at Victoria. "But first, we need medical attention. All of us." Victoria shifted into doctor mode automatically, assessing injuries, triaging priorities. Draven's silver burns were the worst, but his vampire healing was already knitting skin back together. Joseph had taken a wooden round to the shoulder, the projectile lodged but not life-threatening. Katrina was uninjured, though her tactical vest showed 3 impact points that would have been fatal without armor. And Victoria had cracked ribs, silver particle lung damage, and a bullet graze across her left arm she hadn't even noticed until now. Adrenaline was a hell of a drug. She set up a field triage station in the war room, working with the same focused efficiency she'd used in Iraq. IV lines for Draven, vampire-compatible blood substitute to speed healing. Extraction of Joseph's wooden round, clean removal, silver nitrate irrigation to prevent infection. Bandaging her own arm one-handed, because she'd done it 100 times before. Lily sat beside her mother, watching with her oracle sight. "You're going to be okay, Mama. I can see it. All of you heal." "Good," Victoria murmured, taping off the bandage. "Because we're not done fighting." Draven was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You fought like a soldier tonight, like someone who's seen combat before. 2 tours in Iraq, 347 field surgeries under fire." Victoria met his winter eyes. "I told you I could fight." "You did more than fight. You saved my life." Draven's voice was quiet, serious. "That silver cloud should have killed me. Would have, if you hadn't pulled me out. You would have done the same for me." "Yes, but I'm 650 years old. I've been saved before. You're 42 with a daughter who needs you. Yet you charged into a silver cloud without hesitation." He tilted his head, studying her. "Why?" Victoria thought about it. Thought about David, killed by the council's conspiracy. Thought about Lily, hunted for a gift she didn't ask for. Thought about Michael Draven, dying on Omaha Beach while Mrs. Frost made sure he couldn't be saved. "Because," she said finally, "someone has to stand up to them. Someone has to say, 'No more.' If we don't fight back, they've already won." Draven nodded slowly. Then he did something Victoria didn't expect. He removed a ring from his right hand, a simple silver band, tarnished with age, with an inscription in a language she didn't recognize. He held it out to her. "This belonged to Michael. I gave it to him the day he enlisted, 1943. It's been in my family for 400 years, a symbol of the oath we take. To protect what matters, to fight for what's right, to never surrender." Victoria looked at the ring, then at Draven. "I can't take this." "You already live by its oath. You have for years." Draven's voice was gentle but firm. "And Michael would want his granddaughter's mother to have it, would want you to know that you're family, not by blood alone, but by choice, by action." Lily's small hand found Victoria's. "Take it, Mama. I can see it. You're supposed to have it." Victoria's throat tightened. She took the ring with trembling fingers, feeling the weight of history in that small circle of silver. The inscription, when she looked closer, said something in Latin. Acta non verba, Draven translated. Deeds, not words. The Ashcroft family motto, Victoria whispered. My father had it engraved on his jagged core sword. Your father was a wise man. Draven smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. And you're his daughter. That's why I chose you 8 years ago, not just because you needed help with Lily's treatment, but because I recognized something in your service record, the same thing I saw in Michael. The willingness to stand when others run, to fight when others surrender. Victoria slipped the ring onto her right hand. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. So what now? She asked. Mrs. Frost is dead, but she said the council has already turned 50 U.S. senators, 30 British MPs, 12 heads of state. If that's true, it is. Joseph's voice was grim. We've been tracking the conversions for 5 years. Started small, local politicians, judges, military officers. But in the last 6 months it accelerated. They're preparing for something big. The winter solstice, Lily said quietly. That's when it happens. I've seen it in my visions. December 21st, 3 weeks from now. They're planning a coordinated reveal. All the turned officials declare themselves simultaneously on live television in capitals around the world. Draven's jaw set. A synchronized coup. They'll frame it as evolution, as the next step in human-vampire relations. But in reality, Victoria finished, they'll have control of nuclear arsenals, military forces, and intelligence agencies. Any opposition will be eliminated before it can organize. Exactly. Draven stood, pacing. We have 3 weeks to stop them. 3 weeks to expose the conspiracy, eliminate the council leadership, and prevent this coup. How? Katrina asked. We're 4 vampires, 1 Dhampir, and a child. The council has hundreds, maybe thousands of operatives worldwide. We have something they don't, Draven said. He looked at Lily. We have an oracle who can see their moves before they make them, and we have... He turned to Victoria. We have a combat medic who just killed one of the council's best infiltrators and her entire team. Victoria shook her head. I'm not a soldier anymore. I'm a doctor. You're both. That's what makes you dangerous. Draven's winter eyes gleamed. The council expects vampires to fight like vampires. Power, speed, direct confrontation. But you fight like a human soldier. Tactically, strategically. You think 3 steps ahead because that's how you kept your patients alive in a war zone. He was right, and Victoria knew it. Her entire approach to tonight's fight had been different from the vampires. She'd used cover, controlled fire, tactical grenades. She'd fought like someone who could be killed, because for most of her life, she could be. What's the plan? She asked. Draven pulled a map from his desk, not of Vienna, but of Washington, D.C. The council is meeting in 3 days, all of them gathered in one place for the first time in 50 years. It's supposed to be secret, but I have sources. He pointed to a building marked in red. The U.S. Capitol. They're using the Senate chamber for their final planning session. That's insane, Victoria said. Meeting in the heart of the U.S. government? It's brilliant, Draven corrected. Who would think to look for a vampire conspiracy in the most public building in America? And with 50 senators already turned, they control security, access, everything. So we infiltrate, Joseph said, cracking his knuckles. Kill them all while they're gathered. No, Victoria was already thinking, her mind shifting into mission planning mode. If we kill them, we prove their point, that vampires and humans can't coexist, that violence is the only answer. We need to expose them publicly, make them reveal themselves before they're ready. How? Katrina asked. Victoria looked at Lily. Can you see their plan? The details of how they're going to reveal themselves on the solstice? Lily's blind eyes went distant, focusing on futures that hadn't happened yet. I see. Cameras. So many cameras. They're planning a joint session of Congress, State of the Union style, but emergency session. The turned senators will reveal themselves live on C-SPAN, in front of 200 members of Congress and 50 million viewers. "Can you see who's turned and who's human?" Victoria asked. "Yes, I can see their futures. The vampires' futures go on for centuries. The humans don't." Lily's brow furrowed. "But there's something else. A speech. Lord Corvinus is going to give a speech explaining why vampire rule is evolutionary necessity. He's very convincing. In most futures I see, the public accepts it. They're scared at first, but then they agree." Victoria's blood ran cold. "Propaganda. They're going to frame it as beneficial. Vampires protecting humanity, vampire leadership preventing war, vampire resources solving poverty. And anyone who opposes becomes anti-evolution," Draven said bitterly. "They'll be silenced, marginalized, eliminated. Within a generation, questioning vampire authority will be unthinkable. Unless," Victoria said slowly, "we expose the conspiracy before they can control the narrative, show the public what they've been doing, the murders, the manipulations, the coup planning, make it impossible for them to claim moral high ground." Katrina leaned forward. "You're talking about breaking into the U.S. Capitol during a session of Congress with security controlled by 50 vampire senators to expose a conspiracy that will make us look like the monsters." "Yes, that's suicide. It's the only option we have." Victoria looked at each of them in turn. "We have 3 weeks to gather evidence, plan the infiltration, and execute. It's not enough time, but it's what we've got." Draven studied her face for a long moment. Then he smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. "You know what I see when I look at you, Victoria? I see my son. Michael had the same expression when he told me he was enlisting. That absolute certainty that he was doing the right thing, even if it killed him." "Did it?" Victoria asked quietly. "Kill him? Yes. But it also saved 17 people from Auschwitz, held a position long enough for his unit to evacuate 43 wounded, and inspired a young private named Thomas Whitmore, James's older brother, to survive D-Day and come home to start a family." Draven's voice softened. "Michael died, but his death mattered, and that's all any of us can ask for, that when we go, we leave the world better than we found it." Victoria thought of David, killed in Mosul, thought of all the soldiers she'd lost in Iraq, despite her best efforts, thought of the ones she'd saved who were alive right now because she'd been there. "I'm not planning to die in 3 weeks," she said. "I'm planning to win." "Good." Draven extended his hand. "Then let's start planning." They shook on it, a pact between a 650-year-old vampire lord and a 42-year-old combat medic, with the fate of the world hanging in the balance. Lily watched them with her oracle sight, seeing futures branch and twist with every decision. "Mama, I need to tell you something." Victoria turned to her daughter. "What is it, baby?" "I've been seeing more, seeing further than before. Ever since Mrs. Frost died, it's like a door opened in my mind." Lily's voice trembled. "I can see the Capitol now, see the session, see Lord Corvinus giving his speech, and I can see us there trying to stop him." "What happens?" Draven asked gently. Lily bit her lip. "In most futures, we lose. We expose them, but it doesn't matter. They're too powerful, too prepared. The public believes them instead of us. And we—" She trailed off. "We die," Victoria finished. "Not all of you. Some futures, Mama survives. Some futures, Lord Draven survives. But I can't see one where everyone makes it out." The room fell silent. Joseph broke it with a dark laugh. "Then we make our own future. The oracle sees what is probable, yes? Not what is certain." "That's right," Lily said. "Nothing is certain until it happens. That's why they want me, to make the uncertain more predictable. But prediction isn't control." Victoria knelt in front of her daughter. "Can you see what needs to change? What would make the difference between losing and winning?" Lily's oracle sight focused, sharpening. Her blind eyes saw past the present into possibilities and probabilities. "I see evidence." We need evidence they can't refute. Not just testimony, but proof. Medical records of the transformations, financial records of the payments, video of the council meetings where they planned this. Mrs. Frost kept records, Victoria said suddenly. 60 years of records. She was meticulous. I saw her office, saw her files. She documented everything. Where? Draven demanded. I don't know, but if she followed standard operational security, which she would given her background, she'd keep backups. Multiple locations, encrypted, accessible only to her. Katrina was already moving to the computer terminal. If we can access her financial accounts, we can trace data storage payments. Cloud servers, safety deposit boxes, dead drops. She had an offshore account, Victoria remembered. James showed me evidence. $500,000 per month from Lord Corvinus. That's $6 million per year, Joseph calculated. For 60 years, that's $360 million. Even for the council, that's significant expenditure. Draven's face was grim, which means she was more than just a spy. She was the architect of something bigger. Victoria's mind raced, connecting pieces. The conversions. 50 senators don't just agree to become vampires overnight. Someone had to vet them, approach them, convince them. Someone who understood humans, who could blend in, who they'd trust. A housekeeper, Katrina said quietly. Someone invisible. Someone who's been in powerful homes for decades, learning their secrets, their vulnerabilities. How many households has Mrs. Frost worked in? Victoria asked. Draven went very still. I don't know. She came to me in 1956 with impeccable references from 3 European noble families. I never questioned it. We need to find out, Victoria said. If she's been doing this for centuries, infiltrating vampire households, gathering intelligence, then moving to human power structures to execute, she's been building to this for longer than any of us realized. Lily gasped. I see it. I see her past. She was there when they killed your wife, Lord Draven, in 1912. She was the one who set the fire. Draven's face went white. What? She wanted you broken. Wanted you to retreat, to give up on human-vampire cooperation. But you didn't. You kept fighting. So she waited. 60 years, she waited in your house, watching, learning, until she could strike when it would hurt the most. When I had family again, Draven whispered. When I had people I cared about. Victoria saw it then, the full scope of Mrs. Frost's plan, not just a coup, a vendetta, a centuries-long revenge against Nikolai Draven for something that happened before any of them were born. What did you do to her? She asked quietly. Draven's throat worked. In 1887, I opposed the Council's plan to overthrow the Ottoman Empire. They wanted to install vampire leadership across the Middle East, control the oil that was just being discovered. I argued for cooperation instead, working with human governments, not replacing them. He sat down heavily. The Council tried to force the issue, started a war in the Balkans, hoping to destabilize the region enough to justify intervention. Thousands died, human and vampire both. And when I finally stopped it, I did so by executing the Council members responsible. 12 vampires, including Helena Frost's husband. The pieces fell into place. She's been planning this since 1887, Victoria said. 129 years of preparation, of infiltration, of patience. And now she's dead, Joseph said, which means her plan dies with her. No, Lily's voice was certain. Her plan continues. Someone else knows. Someone else has access to her records, her contacts, her preparations. Lord Corvinus, Victoria said. He has to know. He was funding her. Then we make him talk. Draven stood, and Victoria saw the 650-year-old warlord beneath the civilized exterior. We have 3 prisoners from tonight's attack. One of them will know how to reach Corvinus. And when we find him... An alarm shrieked, different from before. This one was a security breach, but not perimeter. Internal. Katrina's fingers flew over the keyboard. Intruder in the east wing, moving fast, heading toward... Her face went pale. The medical wing. Your quarters, Victoria. Victoria's heart stopped. The files. I've been keeping documentation of everything. Mrs. Frost's movements, the donor deaths, medical anomalies in the staff. They're after your evidence, Draven said. Victoria was already running. She burst into her private office to find it ransacked. Drawers pulled open, files scattered, her computer smashed. But worse was the figure standing at her desk, holding the leather journal where she'd kept her most sensitive notes. James Whitmore turned to face her, and Victoria's world tilted. "I'm sorry, Victoria," the estate manager said, his weathered face genuinely regretful. "I truly am. But you were never supposed to survive tonight." Victoria's hand went to her pistol, but James was faster. He had a gun already drawn, aimed at her chest. Not a normal gun. A tranquilizer rifle loaded with enough sedative to drop an elephant, or a Dampier who'd already been exposed to silver particles. "Don't," James said quietly. "I don't want to hurt you, but I will if you make me." "You're working for the council," Victoria said, her voice flat. "You've been working for them the whole time. Not the council, for something bigger." James's eyes were sad. "Mrs. Frost recruited me in 1972 when I came back from Vietnam. She understood what the war did to me, the things I saw, the things I did. She offered purpose, a cause worth fighting for." "Enslaving humanity?" Victoria couldn't keep the disgust from her voice. "Saving humanity, from itself." James gestured to the window, to the world beyond. "I've seen what humans do to each other, Victoria. I've seen villages burned, children murdered, entire populations destroyed because of race, religion, politics. We're destroying ourselves." "So you'd hand control to vampires instead? To beings who've survived centuries, who've seen empires rise and fall, who understand the long view?" James's conviction was absolute. "Yes, because the alternative is extinction. In 100 years we'll have destroyed this planet through war, pollution, greed. Unless someone stops us." Victoria studied him. This man she'd worked beside for 8 years, who'd seemed like an ally just hours ago. "You were there, in the wine cellar, when I found Marcus Reiner's body. You tried to warn me about Mrs. Frost. I tried to save you, tried to get you to leave before tonight's attack, before you got swept up in this." James's voice cracked. "You're a good person, Victoria. You didn't deserve to be collateral damage. But I am, because I'm standing between you and Lily. You don't have to. The Oracle won't be harmed. She's too valuable. She'll be protected, educated, given everything she needs. And you—" James lowered the rifle slightly. "You could work with us. Use your medical skills to help with transformations, to make the process safer. You'd be saving lives. By ending human freedom, by ending human self-destruction." James took a step forward. "Please, Victoria, I don't want to be the one who kills you. I've killed enough people in my life. Don't make me add you to that list." Victoria's mind raced. James had a rifle. She had a pistol that would take 2 seconds to draw, 2 seconds she didn't have. He was human, but he was also a Vietnam veteran with 50 years of combat experience and no hesitation about pulling that trigger. But he'd made one mistake. He'd turned his back to the door. "You won't kill me," Victoria said quietly. "Because you're right. You are a good person, James. Vietnam broke something in you, and Mrs. Frost took advantage of that. But deep down, you still believe in protecting the innocent. Lily will be protected. Will she?" Victoria took a step forward, drawing his attention. "When the council is done with her, when they've used her oracle sight to secure their power, what then? Do you really think they'll let a child who can see their futures live? She'll be a liability." James hesitated. Lord Corvinus promised Mrs. Frost 60 years of safety, too. And where is she now? Dead in a wine cellar, burned to ash because she'd outlived her usefulness. Behind James, the door opened silently. Draven stood there, sword in hand, winter eyes cold. James saw it in Victoria's face, saw her attention flick past him for just a microsecond. He started to turn. Victoria dove left as the tranquilizer rifle fired. The dart hit the wall where she'd been standing, embedding in plaster. Draven moved faster than human eyes could track. His sword swept up, knocking the rifle from James's hands. Then he had the old veteran by the throat, lifted off his feet, pressed against the wall. 60 years, Draven said softly, dangerously. You've been in my employ for 60 years. You fought beside me. I trusted you. James didn't struggle. I know. I'm sorry, my lord. But this is bigger than loyalty. Bigger than both of us. Nothing is bigger than loyalty. Draven's grip tightened. Nothing is more important than keeping your word, protecting those you've sworn to protect. That's what separates us from monsters, our ability to choose honor over convenience. Honor? James laughed bitterly. I watched my brothers die in rice paddies for honor, watched a country tear itself apart over honor. Honor is just a word powerful people use to control weak ones. No. Victoria stood, brushing plaster dust from her jacket. Honor is the only thing that makes us human, the only thing that says, I will keep my promises even when it costs me. She looked at James, really looked at him, saw the broken soldier inside, the man who'd seen too much death and lost faith in humanity's ability to save itself. You're right about one thing, she said quietly. Humans destroy each other. We're violent, greedy, short-sighted, but we're also brave, creative, capable of extraordinary kindness, and we deserve the chance to save ourselves, not have salvation forced on us by immortals who think they know better. And if we can't, James asked, if we destroy ourselves anyway? Then that's our choice to make. Freedom means the freedom to fail. Anything else is just a prettier cage. Draven lowered James to the ground, releasing his throat. The old man collapsed, coughing. What do we do with him? Katrina asked from the doorway, pistol trained on James. Victoria looked at the man who'd tried to save her even while betraying everything she fought for. We let him go. Everyone stared at her. Victoria, Draven started. Let him go, she repeated. Back to the council. Tell them what happened here tonight. Tell them we're coming. James looked up, confused. Why? Because I want them to know. I want Lord Corvinus to know that we killed his best infiltrator, destroyed his strike team, and we're not hiding anymore. Victoria's voice was steel. I want him afraid. I want him making mistakes because he's afraid, and I want him to underestimate us because he thinks we're being foolish. Understanding dawned in Draven's eyes. You're giving them false confidence, making them think we're amateurs who reveal our plans. While we do the opposite, gather evidence in secret, plan in silence, strike when they're not ready. Victoria looked at James. Tell Corvinus we're coming to the capital in 3 weeks. Tell him we're going to expose him during the session. Tell him everything. He'll be ready for you, James said. Good. Let him prepare for the fight he expects. Victoria smiled coldly. We'll give him a different one. She pulled James to his feet, surprisingly gentle. Go. And James, thank you for trying to warn me. That part was real, wasn't it? You genuinely wanted me to escape. The old veteran nodded, eyes bright with unshed tears. I did. I do. But I can't change sides now. I've gone too far. I know. Victoria handed him his rifle, unloaded. Maybe in another life we could have been on the same side. Maybe. James walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, your father would be proud of you. Colonel Ashcroft was a good man. He believed in duty, in honor, in doing what's right, even when it's hard. Victoria's throat tightened. How did you know my father? Vietnam, 1971. He prosecuted my court-martial for following an illegal order, killing civilians in my lie. He got me acquitted by proving I'd tried to stop it, that I'd reported it. James smiled sadly. He told me, a soldier's duty is to protect the innocent, even when commanded otherwise. I've never forgotten that. He left, footsteps echoing in the corridor. Katrina lowered her pistol. That was either brilliant or the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Both, Victoria said. Probably both. Draven was studying her with renewed interest. You learned that in Iraq? Psychological warfare? I learned it from my father. He said the best way to win a legal case is to make your opponent overconfident. Let them think they've already won, then show them the evidence they didn't know you had. And we have evidence they don't know about, Draven said slowly. Mrs. Frost's records, hidden somewhere. Medical documentation I've been keeping for 8 years. Lily's oracle testimony. Victoria ticked them off on her fingers. And one more thing. 3 prisoners downstairs who are about to tell us everything they know about council operations. They won't talk, Joseph said. Vampire loyalty runs deep. Medical loyalty runs deeper. Victoria picked up her bag. I have truth serum that works on vampires. Sodium pentothal modified with silver particles. Enough to loosen tongues without causing permanent damage. Katrina whistled. You're terrifying when you want to be. I'm a mother protecting her child. Victoria's voice was matter-of-fact. There's nothing more dangerous than that. They descended to the cellars. Not the wine cellar where Mrs. Frost had died, but the old dungeon beneath, built when Ravencrest Manor served as a fortress in the 18th century. 3 vampires sat chained to the wall with silver shackles, young, maybe 50 years old at most. They looked at Victoria with a mixture of fear and defiance. I'm going to ask you questions, she said calmly, loading a syringe with the modified truth serum. You're going to answer them. And if you lie, I'll know. Because sodium pentothal doesn't care about vampire mental resistance. It works on brain chemistry, and you still have brains. The first vampire spat at her feet. We serve the council. We'll never betray. Victoria injected him mid-sentence. Within 30 seconds, his eyes glazed slightly, his posture relaxing as the drug took effect. What's your name? She asked. Thomas. Thomas Becker. His voice was slurred but honest. Who sent you here tonight? Lord Corvinus, through Mrs. Frost. She was our handler. What was your mission? Capture the Oracle, kill Lord Draven, eliminate all witnesses. The words spilled out without resistance. Mrs. Frost said it would be easy, said Draven was weak, alone, but she was wrong. You're like a demon. Victoria ignored the description. Where is Lord Corvinus now? Washington, U.S. Capitol. He's been there for 3 months, coordinating with the turned senators, planning the reveal. How many vampires are protecting him? 50. His personal guard, all ancient, all loyal. How many senators have been turned? 53, and 37 representatives, 90 total. Thomas's head lolled. It's already too late. Even if you expose them, the transitions are legal. They volunteered. Can't prosecute someone for choosing to become vampire. Victoria's heart sank. He was right. If the transformations were voluntary, consensual, there was no crime. The council had covered their legal exposure. What about the evidence? She asked. Mrs. Frost's records. Where are they? Don't know. She never told us. Said it was insurance. If the council betrayed her, automatic release. Everything goes public. A dead man's switch, Draven muttered. If she's killed, her evidence gets released automatically. But she's already dead, Katrina said. Why hasn't it triggered? Thomas smiled through his drug haze. Because she's not really dead. She backed up her consciousness. Digital upload. If her body dies, she activates in the network. Impossible to kill. Victoria felt cold. You can do that? Upload a vampire's consciousness? New technology. Last 5 years. Council's been working with tech companies, Silicon Valley startups. Download vampire memories, experiences, intelligence into quantum computers. Digital immortality. Where are these backups stored? Draven demanded. Don't know exact location, but somewhere in Nevada. Server farms, massive cooling systems. Mrs. Frost said even if you destroy her body, her mind lives on. She'll complete her mission from the digital realm. Victoria looked at Draven, saw her own horror reflected in his eyes. They weren't just fighting vampires anymore. They were fighting an enemy that had transcended death itself. 21 days until the winter solstice. Victoria stood in the war room staring at satellite images of the U.S. Capitol building spread across the table. Beside her, Lily traced invisible patterns in the air, seeing futures that hadn't happened yet, probability streams branching and converging like rivers. "In most timelines we fail," Lily said quietly. "Lord Corvinus gives his speech. The world accepts vampire leadership, and within 10 years, humans are less. Second-class citizens in our own world." Draven's jaw clenched. "Then we change the timeline." "How?" Katrina demanded. "We're 4 vampires, 1 Dhampir, and a child against 90 vampire politicians, 50 elite guards, and a digital ghost who can't be killed." Victoria didn't look up from the maps. Her mind was working, processing variables like she'd done in Iraq. Hostile territory, superior numbers, limited resources. The answer was always the same. Don't fight their fight. Change the battlefield. "We don't fight them," she said. "We expose them. But not to the public. To each other." Everyone stared at her. "Lily, can you see which senators are loyal to Corvinus versus which ones were coerced? Which ones volunteered versus which ones were threatened?" Lily's oracle sight focused. "Yes, about 30 volunteered for power. The other 23. They were blackmailed, threatened, or their families were in danger. They hate what they've become. Then we give them a way out." Victoria pointed to the Senate chamber layout. "We don't expose the conspiracy from outside. We create a civil war from within." Draven's eyes gleamed. "Turn the reluctant converts against Corvinus." "Exactly. Show them evidence that he plans to eliminate them once they're no longer useful, which he does, doesn't he?" Lily nodded slowly. "I can see it. After the reveal, after vampire rule is established, Corvinus purges anyone he considers weak or unreliable. 43 of the 90 don't survive the first year." "Including the ones who were blackmailed," Victoria said. "The ones he forced into this. We show them that evidence, show them their own deaths in Corvinus's plan, and we give them a choice: die as his pawns or live as witnesses against him." Joseph grinned. "Divide and conquer. I like it." "But how do we get the evidence?" Katrina asked. "Mrs. Frost's digital backup could release everything, but we don't control it." Victoria turned to the 3 prisoners still chained in the corner. Thomas Becker, the one she'd interrogated, looked up with glassy eyes, the truth serum still working. "Thomas, Mrs. Frost's dead man switch. What triggers it?" "Biometric. Confirmation of death. Heart stops, brain activity ceases, for more than 12 hours. Then, automatic upload to WikiLeaks, every major news outlet, and the International Criminal Court." "What's in the upload?" "Everything. Financial records, medical files, video of council meetings, names, dates, methods. Complete exposure of the entire operation." Victoria's mind raced. "But she's already dead. It's been 6 hours. Why hasn't it triggered?" Thomas's drug-addled brain struggled with the question. Because there's a delay. She programmed it. 72 hours after death. Gives the council time to secure her backup, prevent the upload." "Where's the backup server?" "Nevada, outside Las Vegas. Facility called Eternal Minds Digital Preservation. Private company. Council owns it through shell corporations." Draven pulled up a satellite image. The facility was massive, a concrete bunker in the desert surrounded by security fencing and guard towers. "We'd need an army to breach this." "Or we just wait," Victoria said. 66 hours from now, Mrs. Frost's evidence uploads automatically. Every crime, every conspiracy, every murder released to the world." "But that exposes us too," Joseph protested. "Shows that vampires exist, that we've been hiding among humans for centuries. It'll cause panic, possibly war." "Not if we control the narrative." Victoria looked at Lily. "Can you see what happens if we let the upload occur, but we're the ones explaining it? If we're at the Capitol when it drops, if we're the ones telling the story?" Lily's eyes went distant. Seconds passed. A minute. Her expression shifted from concentration to surprise to something like hope. "It works," she breathed. If we're there, if we show that not all vampires support the coup, if we prove that some of you have been protecting humans for centuries. She looked at Draven. Your history, Michael at D-Day, the refugees you saved. If that's part of the evidence Mrs. Frost releases, it changes everything. She documented my opposition to the council, Draven realized. 60 years of reports showing that I've been fighting against this coup the entire time. Exactly. You become proof that vampires aren't monolithic, that there's a choice. Victoria's plan crystallized. We go to Washington. We infiltrate the Capitol during their planning session, 3 days from now before the public reveal. We force a confrontation, and when Mrs. Frost's evidence drops in front of everyone, we make sure we're the ones controlling what it means. Katrina whistled softly. That's either genius or suicide. Both, Victoria agreed. Probably both. They flew into Reagan National 2 nights later, fake passports, separate flights, meeting at a safe house in Alexandria that Draven had maintained since the 1960s. Victoria had left Lily behind in Vienna, protected by Joseph and 6 vampire guards loyal to Draven. It had been the hardest decision of her life, but Lily herself had insisted. I can see better from a distance, Mama, the girl had said, hugging her mother tight. And if something goes wrong, Joseph knows where to take me. You've taught me how to survive. Now, standing in a cramped Alexandria townhouse with Draven and Katrina, Victoria felt the weight of that separation like a physical ache. Focus, Draven said gently, reading her expression. We do this right. You see her again in 72 hours. And if we don't? Then she survives. Joseph will make sure of it. That's the promise I made Michael in 1943, and I keep my promises, even across generations. They reviewed the plan one final time. The Capitol building, the Senate chamber, the security protocols. Katrina had obtained credentials through contacts in the Vampire Intelligence Network. Press passes, security clearances, all legitimate enough to pass initial screening. The challenge was the 50 vampire guards protecting Corvinus. Ancient vampires, each with centuries of combat experience. We're not there to fight them, Victoria reminded everyone. We're there to create chaos, turn the reluctant senators against Corvinus, force him to reveal himself before he's ready. And if he doesn't take the bait? Katrina asked. Victoria pulled a small device from her bag, a portable hard drive, encrypted. Then we show this. Medical records I've been keeping for 8 years. Proof that vampire transformations cause neural degradation after 5 years. That every Senator Corvinus turned is literally losing their humanity, their free will, their ability to choose. Draven stared at the drive. Is that true? I don't know, but the scans look convincing enough that they'll believe it. Victoria met his eyes. Sometimes in war you fight with what you have, not what you wish you had. Your father taught you that too? My father taught me that duty means doing what's necessary, not what's comfortable. Victoria checked her pistol, silver rounds loaded, one in the chamber. He also taught me that when you can't win by force, you win by being smarter than your enemy. Corvinus is 500 years old, Katrina warned. He's survived centuries of political intrigue. But he's never faced a combat medic who spent 8 years pretending to be mute while documenting his crimes. Victoria's smile was cold. He thinks I'm just a doctor. That's his mistake. The Capitol building at midnight was less secure than Victoria expected, a side effect of having 50 vampire senators controlling security protocols. They'd made themselves untouchable, which meant they'd gotten careless. Victoria, Draven, and Katrina entered through the tunnels beneath the building, the same routes senators use to move between office buildings. Their press credentials got them past the first checkpoint. Vampire glamour, Draven's specialty, got them past the second. By 1 a.m., they stood outside the Senate chamber, listening to voices inside. The planning session was in full swing. 60 hours until the reveal, Lord Corvinus's voice carried through the heavy doors. Everything must be perfect. The speech, the timing, the presentation. We're not just announcing vampire leadership, we're selling evolution. Victoria pressed her ear to the door, her dampier hearing picking up every word. "Some of you have expressed concerns," Corvinus continued, "about your families, about your futures. Let me assure you, those who stand with me will be rewarded beyond measure. Those who don't—" A pause, heavy with menace. "Well, evolution has no place for the weak." Victoria looked at Draven and nodded. This was it. They burst through the doors. 90 vampires turned as one, senators in expensive suits, representatives in business casual, all of them with the too perfect stillness of the undead. At the podium, Lord Corvinus stood frozen, his practiced smile slipping. "Lord Draven," he said, recovering quickly. "How unexpected! And you've brought friends." Victoria stepped forward, very aware of the 50 guards materializing from the shadows. "Dr. Victoria Ashcroft, I've been treating your people for 8 years, documenting their transformations, their neural degradation, their slow loss of free will." Murmurs rippled through the assembled vampires. "Lies," Corvinus said smoothly. "Dr. Ashcroft has been compromised by Lord Draven's propaganda. I'm a combat medic who's performed over 300 field surgeries," Victoria interrupted. "I know neural damage when I see it. And every vampire you've turned in the past 5 years shows the same pattern: deteriorating frontal lobe function, reduced decision-making capacity, increased susceptibility to suggestion." She pulled out the hard drive. "I have brain scans, medical records, proof that your gift of immortality is actually a death sentence for human consciousness." The room erupted. Senators shouting, demanding to see the evidence, guards moving forward, hands on weapons. Corvinus raised a hand, and silence fell. "Even if this were true, which it isn't, what do you propose? That we reverse the transformations? That's impossible." "No," Draven said, stepping beside Victoria. "We propose you face justice for creating unwilling converts, for blackmailing senators, murdering witnesses, and planning a coup against humanity." "Justice?" Corvinus laughed. "From who? You're outnumbered 50 to 1. My guards will kill you before you take another breath." "Maybe," Victoria said. "But in—" She checked her watch. 43 minutes. Helena Frost's dead man's switch activates. Every crime you've committed, every murder, every manipulation, uploads to every news outlet in the world, including your plan to purge the senators you consider weak after the reveal. The room went deathly silent. "She's bluffing," Corvinus said, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Victoria pulled out her phone, showing satellite footage of the Nevada facility. "Eternal Minds Digital Preservation, your backup server, where Mrs. Frost's consciousness currently resides, counting down to exposure. You want to stop it? You'd need to breach that facility, shut down the servers, and wipe the drives in." Another glance at her watch. 42 minutes. From Washington, D.C. "Impossible," Corvinus breathed. "Exactly." Victoria looked at the assembled senators. "So here's your choice. Stand with Corvinus and go down with him when the evidence drops. Or stand with us, testify against him, and maybe, just maybe, survive what's coming." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Senator Patricia Chen stood, a 70-year-old woman from California, transformed just 6 months ago. "He threatened my grandchildren, said if I didn't cooperate, they'd disappear. I never wanted this." Another senator rose, then another. Within seconds, 23 of the 90 were standing. The reluctant converts, the blackmail victims, the ones who'd been waiting for someone to give them an option besides obedience. Corvinus's face twisted with rage. "Traitors! All of you! Guards! Kill them all!" The 50 elite guards moved as one. Draven's sword sang from its sheath. Katrina's pistols blazed. And Victoria became what she'd been trained to be. Not a doctor, not a mother, a soldier. She moved through the chaos with surgical precision, each shot carefully placed. Not killing, these were victims as much as enemies, but incapacitating. Kneecaps, shoulders, weapons shot from hands. The reluctant senators fought beside them, decades of human combat training still remembered despite their transformations. Corvinus fled toward a side exit. Draven pursued, 650 years of vampire speed against 500. They clashed in the corridor beyond, sword against claws, ancient against ancient. Victoria reached them just as Corvinus gained the upper hand, his claws at Draven's throat. "Wait," she said quietly. Corvinus turned, surprised. "You think you can stop me, human?" "No, but I can show you something." Victoria held up her phone. "Mrs. Frost's upload. It just went live." On the screen, news alerts exploded. CNN, BBC, every major outlet. The evidence flooding the internet, unstoppable. But not the evidence Corvinus expected. "You see," Victoria said softly, "Mrs. Frost wasn't loyal to you. She was loyal to herself. And in her backup, she documented everything, including your plan to eliminate her once the coup succeeded. You were going to kill her, Marcus, after 60 years of service." Corvinus's face went slack. "No, she wouldn't. She was 280 years old. She survived that long by trusting no one." Victoria stepped closer. "And her evidence doesn't just expose the coup, it exposes you, your murders, your betrayals, your plan to kill 43 senators after using them." The phone showed images flooding social media, not just the vampire conspiracy, but Corvinus's personal crimes. Centuries of murder, betrayals of allies, plans within plans. "You're finished," Draven said, rising to his feet. "Not by our hand, by your own paranoia, by your own crimes." Corvinus looked at the phone, at the unstoppable evidence destroying everything he'd built. Then he looked at Victoria. "You did this. You planned this." "I'm a soldier," Victoria said simply. "We win wars by being smarter than our enemies." Corvinus lunged. Victoria was faster. The silver blade, her father's combat knife, blessed and sharp, found his heart with field surgeon precision. Corvinus gasped, shock on his face, as 500 years of life drained away. "That's for my husband," Victoria whispered. "And for every victim you created." He crumbled to ash. 6 months later, Ravencrest Manor had changed. The West Wing now housed the Draven Ashcroft Foundation, a research center dedicated to studying vampire-human cooperation, safe transformation protocols, and rehabilitation for unwilling converts. Victoria ran the medical division, using her skills to help the 23 reluctant senators return to some semblance of normalcy. Not all of them survived the treatments, but enough did to prove it was possible. Draven had stepped into the power vacuum left by Corvinus's death, reforming the council into something resembling democratic oversight. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. And Lily, brave, brilliant Lily, was training her oracle gift properly, learning to see futures without being consumed by them. On a cool spring evening, Victoria found Draven in the conservatory where Lily used to sit. He was staring at the gardens, a glass of wine in his hand. "You're thinking about Michael," she said quietly, sitting beside him. "Always." He smiled sadly. "But also about you, about what you've accomplished, what you've built here. What we've built. No, this is your legacy, Victoria." He looked at her. "Michael died fighting Nazis. You stopped a vampire coup. Both of you understood the same thing, that some fights are worth dying for and some are worth living for." Victoria touched the ring on her finger, Michael's ring, still warm against her skin. "My father used to say that duty isn't about dying heroically. It's about living honorably, doing what's right even when no one's watching." "Acta non verba," Draven said softly. "Deeds, not words." Victoria stood, looking out at the sunset she could see now without fear. "For 8 years, I was silent. I thought silence was survival. But I learned something." "What?" "That silence is only powerful when you choose it. When you speak, you'd better have something worth saying." She turned to him. "And when you act, you'd better make it count." Lily appeared in the doorway, no longer blind. The oracle gift had restored her sight as it matured, another unexpected blessing. "Mama? Lord Draven? Dinner's ready. Joseph made his terrible stroganoff again." Victoria laughed. "Tell him we'll be right there." As Lily disappeared, Draven raised his glass. To Michael, to David, to all the ones who fell so we could stand. Victoria raised her own glass. And to the ones still standing, still fighting, still choosing duty over comfort. They drank as the sun set over Vienna, two soldiers from different centuries, bound by loss and honor and the understanding that some wars never end. They just change battlefields. 3 months after Lord Corvinus's death, a package arrived at Ravencrest Manor addressed to Dr. Victoria Ashcroft. Inside was a single item, her father's jag-core sword, the one with acta non verba engraved on the blade. A note accompanied it, in handwriting she recognized. Captain Ashcroft, your father would be proud, as am I. The sword belongs with someone who lives its motto. Fair winds, James Whitmore. Victoria held the blade, feeling its weight, its history. Her father had carried it through 40 years of military service, defending soldiers who needed someone to stand for them. Now she would carry it forward, not as a weapon of war, but as a reminder that silence has its place, that words have their power. But in the end, the only thing that truly matters is what you do when no one's watching, when the cameras are off, when there's no glory, no recognition, no reward except knowing you did what was right. She hung the sword above the Foundation's entrance where everyone who came seeking help would see it. A reminder that duty doesn't end. It evolves, and sometimes the person society calls broken, the mute veteran, the blind child, the monster who's lived too long, are the only ones strong enough to fix what's been shattered for centuries. Because real power isn't living forever. It's knowing what you're willing to die for. And that's a truth worth speaking.